Well, hello, Internet. Today I'm going to do something a little bit crazy. I'm going to try to teach pretty much everything there is to know about CSS3 in one video. So I have a lot to do, so let's get into it. Okay, so in the description underneath the video, you're going to find links to all of the different parts of this tutorial, as well as a link to all of the code or HTML, CSS that you will find here. And on the left side of the screen, I have Sublime Text. On the right side, I have Google Chrome. I'm going to be referring to two different websites throughout this tutorial. One is this Wikipedia page right here, which is going to provide us with all the hexadecimal codes for a whole ton of different colors. So there is that link, and I'll put that in the description as well. And also you're going to see here the easy way for us to validate to make sure that our style sheets are all compliant, and there is the link for that. So what I did was I went ahead and created all of the HTML, which you can see right here, and then I'm going to jump over and create all the style sheets to edit it so that you can see everything as it happens. The very first thing I'm going to do is open up heading.css, and inside of this heading I'm going to define an h1 tag style as well as an h2 tag style, and that is how you can style two things at one time. And I'm just going to change the text color here to white. That's how we change our text color. And I'm going to change the background color behind all of this to black. And then I'm going to throw on some padding all the way around this guy of 15 pixels. And then I'm going to open up paragraph.css, and I'm just going to say that all of my paragraphs are going to have the default styling to have text color of blue. Now what I'm going to be able to do is go into my main style.css and import both of those styles that I created right there. Now whenever you're dealing with imports, anytime you want to use them, they must be the very first thing in your style sheet. And I'm just going to come in here and go import and type in the names for those style sheets that I just created just a second ago, and then import again, and this is going to be paragraph this time .css. And since I have the main style sheet right here defined as my default style sheet, and this is how we would be able to link to outside style sheets. I'm not going to get into inlining style sheets because that should be avoided at all costs. I'm going to put in my semicolons after my import statement, save that, and reload. And you're going to see all the different things that changed here. Text changed to white, and here you're going to see for this other heading tag that has changed to white and the background changed to black. Also, if we come down here, we can see that our paragraphs all changed to blue based off of our defining that right there. If you want to focus in and change everything across the entire document, you're just going to put in a star. And let's say that I want to define my font family. This is how you would define your fonts. And let's say I want my default font across everything to be Arial Black. I would put that inside of quotes. Anytime we have spaces inside of font names, we're going to put them inside of quotes. And then we're going to define other defaults font-wise that may exist if the first font that we define does not show up. And we can save that, reload, and you're going to see all the fonts change right there, everywhere. That's what the star does for us. If I instead just wanted to change everything that lies inside of a div, let's just copy font family, and we'll just type this, and then font family. And let's say anything inside of a div I want to be Comic Sans. Type in Comic Sans. MS, make sure you close that off of that quote, and then I could do anything. It doesn't have to follow any real guidelines, just whatever I put inside of here. And whenever you only have one statement in here, you can either put the semicolon in or leave it out. I'm going to leave it in there and reload, and now you're going to see that this right here lies inside of a div, so all of those links all of a sudden, as well as everything down here, is all going to be changed to Comic Sans. If I flip over to the HTML here for a second, and we come down here, we can see here we defined a class for this link right here. And if we want to focus in and change styling just on classes, we are going to type in a period and then the name of said class. So that was site link. And let's just stick to the old font family guy. And let's say that we want the default to be Georgia or serif. That's how we can define that, and reload. And you're going to see that changed right there. And as we make changes in the style sheet, anything that overrides what is up here is going to override it. So it's going to continue to cascade down and change as things go on. And that's pretty much where the term cascading comes from. If I wanted to come in here and change the Tony quote, in this situation, this does not have a class, but it has an ID, as you can see right here, ID. If I want to focus in and change styling on an ID, I put a hash symbol in, and then Tony quote, right like this. And I could change the font family on this. Let's say I want to do Lucidia Sans Unicode or Lucidia Grand and then Sans Serif. I can do that. make sure we go and put a semicolon here at the end because we're going to make multiple changes here. And let's say that I want the color of this guy to be black. I can do that. And you can see it changed. If I wanted to go in and change site links or classes named site links only inside of paragraphs, I would type in P for the paragraphs and then site link. And I could come in and change my font family again. I'm on purpose making all these font names different just so you can see the most common types of fonts that you're going to be able to use right out of the box on any browser. And there's Book Antiqua, Palatino, or Serif. And then let's say that I want to have my default color be black. Reload, and now you can see right here, this font right there changed to Palatino Linotype. And if we flip over here, come down here, you can see this has a class name of site link, and it's a paragraph. So that's the reason that that changed, and the other ones did not. Likewise, let's say that I wanted to come in here and change Tony Robbins. So let's bounce over here. And here we can see Tony Robbins is right here. And it is inside of a span that has the ID of Tony name. Well, how are we going to target IDs? Well, we're going to use a hash symbol. And then if we want to specifically target this span, we're going to come over here. We're going to say span. We want to target any span on the screen with the ID of Tony name. And we'll be able to go in there and change that. And let's change the font family again, Times New Roman, which I'm sure you've seen before. And as this continues, we're going to get into crazier things. I just want to start off with the simple things here first. And there's Times and there's Serif once again. And then just to make that stand out a little bit better, let's change that to blue. And now you can see Tony Robbins' name changed right there. Now let's say we wanted to target an ID of tutorials. Let's come over here and look at this. There's an ID for tutorials. And then we wanted to specifically target ordered lists right there and items in those ordered lists. Well, we would go tutorials because that is an ID, and then ordered list, and then list items. Now we'll be able to come in there and change those to purple, and you can see they're purple now. I could also go in and target the unordered list, these guys right here, by doing likewise, tutorials, unordered list, list items, and let's give those the text color of green just to make those stand out a little bit different. And now they're green. Now let's say I want to do something a little bit weirder, like I want to target this paragraph that's right here that follows the favorite video games right here that's inside of an H3 tag. So let's bounce over and look at that. Here's an H3 tag, and I want to target the paragraph that comes immediately after it. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go H3 plus paragraph. And let's change the font style to this, to italic, and you can see it's now italic. Maybe then let's say that I want to come in here and specifically target this link that follows after the H3 tag and is inside of a paragraph. Well, I'm going to do something quite simple. I'm going to go H3, want to target the paragraph that comes after it, and then I want to target the link that is inside of said paragraph. Red, and now that's red. Just trying to show you all the different ways of targeting things. Let's say that I wanted to target every single paragraph that has a class. There we go. You can go like this, and let's say that I want to change the background color for all those guys to gray. Let's see how many paragraphs I have with a class. Well, there's that one. I guess there's only one of them. And then we could also come in and target specifically paragraphs, I don't know, that have an ID. And let's change the background color for those into yellow. And you can see the Tony quote up here turn yellow. Let's bounce over to the HTML again. Let's say that we want to target anything with the alt of Nintendo. Let's say anything. And then we'll say alt, do this little squiggly, well, make sure it says alt, do our little squiggly, equal to, and then we'll say Nintendo. And we can come in here, change the background to orange. And you can see if I take that semicolon out of there and reload it, it's still going to work. And you can see here how everything's highlighted in orange. So there's a quick rundown of how to target all sorts of different things, and we'll get into more of them as the tutorial continues. Now I'd like to talk about the difference between borders, margins, and paddings. Well, the border is going to be surrounding all of your content, and it is going to be the outside of whatever padding you define. So here's going to be your content, your text, your images, your whatever. Then you're going to have your padding, then you're going to have your border, and then you're going to have your margin. Now let's go in and start playing with those. As you can see, I went in here and created some text, and I'm going to demonstrate a whole bunch of different font properties and a whole bunch of other different things. So let's jump into the style sheet. What I'm going to really focus in here first off is this paragraph with the ID of lorem, and we're going to play around with margins and paddings and all that different stuff. Now it's an ID, so of course I'm going to type in a hash symbol like this. Now if I wanted to define my padding, I can do it in numerous different ways. As you can see, bottom, right, top, and left all pop up right there. If I wanted to change the padding right on one line, I could say 10 pixels, and that would be at the top, was where I'm going to put my padding. Another 10 pixels is going to be on the right. Another 10 pixels is going to be at the bottom. And another 10 pixels is going to be on the left side of the screen. So it goes in a circle, sort of like a clock. If I, however, would get rid of these, and let's say that I change this to 25 pixels, what that is saying is I want my top to be 10 pixels. I want the right and left to be 25 pixels, and I want the bottom to be 10 pixels. If, however, I change this to just two of these, this is saying that I want my top and bottom to have a padding of 10 pixels and my right and left to have a padding of 25 pixels. Not really necessarily something you need to memorize, but something you can talk about anyway. So, like I said, we could also come in here and do padding top. And let's say I wanted to do 20 pixels for that. I could then come in and do padding bottom like this. And let's say that I also want that to be 25 or 20 pixels. And there we go. There is 20 pixels. And if we reload it, you can see that the padding has indeed changed. It's going to show up a little bit better though whenever we talk about borders. So we might as well just go in here and talk about margins, and then we'll talk about borders. We can define our margins in much the same way as I talked about before. If we have 4 here, the first one's going to define the top, the right, bottom, and left in that specific order. If we have 3, it's going to target the top, right, and left, then bottom. And if I only have 2, it's going to be the top, bottom, and then the left and the right. I'm just going to come in here and define margin like this and say 10 pixels. Why don't we come in and then mess around with our borders. And here I'm going to do something a little bit funkier. Let's say I want to come in and define my border for the top and have it be 5 pixels. That's going to be the border size for the line. I can have it be solid. And then let's go and throw in a hex code. And I showed you where I get all my hex codes. They're from the wiki colors area. And if I reload it, you can see it is a solid blue line. I could then come in and define my border bottom. And you can see you can also come in and define the width of the lines and all that stuff all in separate little tags, but I never do that, and pretty much nobody else ever does otherwise. I could also type in dotted instead of my common solid. Define a left border, and let's make this dashed. And then finally my border right, and have this be 5 pixels and double. It's going to be a double line, and close that off. And there you can see all the different borders over here on the right side of the screen. The other different line types you're going to be able to use is none, dotted, dashed, solid, double, groove, ridge, inset, and outset. And I leave it to you to play around with those. And that leaves us into the background. Remember, we are inside of this paragraph with the idea of lorem. If I wanted to change the background color for that, I can just type in background and then throw in some type of background right like that to keep it very simple. And there it went, just real subtle color. I could also come into the background area and, well, we could leave a color inside of there. I could also type in a URL to an image. So let's say repeat, and then define repeat like this. And reload it, you can see it has like a stone background there, and now the text is completely illegible. We could change the color of the text, of course, to white to see if that changes and makes that look any better. And it does a little bit, but not really. Just pulled that image out there randomly. You could also define how these images would be repeated. So repeat is just going to be repeated to the horizontal level as well as the vertical. You could also type in repeat -x if you just wanted the image to repeat to the horizontal plane. You could type -y if you wanted it to just repeat up and down, or you could type in no repeat. Just make sure that you put the little dash inside of there. Another thing we could do is we could go into the background area and define the position of whatever image is in the background to be either in the left, top, bottom, or right. And this would be in situations in which we are not going to repeat. And I'll get a little bit more into the other different ways we can mess around with the background as the tutorial continues. And I'm just going to go in here and paste in a whole bunch of different font properties. You can see here, font style, font variant, font weight, font size, and all the other different options that are available. There's font height as well. And if I save that and bounce over here, you can see all of them defined, and they all have their own ID. And if I reload it, you're going to see all the different stylings that are available to us. So font style normal is just going to look normal. Then you have italic, then you have oblique, which looks almost identical to italic. Font variant normal, variant small caps, font weight normal, font bold, font bolder, and there's lighter, and there's medium, there's extra, extra small. There's also an extra small, here's small, extra, extra large, large, and there is font size set at 200%. And if you bounce over here and look at the style sheet and come down here, you can see exactly how all of those are defined. Didn't want to spend too much time on them, of course. All of this is available in the description. Now let's bounce in here and take a look at some different ways we can position things. Once again, I have all of the HTML here. We're going to focus in on it. Very first thing I'm going to focus in on here is this parent div. Once again, an ID, so we're going to use a hash symbol, and I'm going to say parent div in the style sheet. And let's say that I want the background color for that div to be changed to that color, and then let's say that I also want to come in and define a border, and let's go in and change this border to 0.1 EM, and I might as well, even though I talked about it in my HTML5 tutorial, why don't I talk about the different unit types that are available to us in CSS. Now basically the different unit types you're going to see all the time is going to either be pixels, points, EMs, or